Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I see we have a few of you guys on, but we're going to go ahead and get started, and we are recording this today. So you can always go back and screenshot or take any notes later. It'll be posted on our YouTube and Facebook page after today. But I'm Emily, and I am one on staff at Turning Point, and I want to welcome you guys and thanks for joining today. But if you guys have any questions throughout Dr. Kennett and Hannah's presentation, please feel free to post in the Q&A box or make a chat or anything like that, and I can make sure your question gets answered. So before I turn it over, we'll go ahead and recognize our socially responsible partners that make all these events possible to no charge to our patients. So we're super grateful that that's an opportunity that we get for that. So now I can go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Kennett and Hannah and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for being here today.
Okay, good morning, everyone. You all can hear me and see the PowerPoint? Okay, let me switch this over here, that way. Okay, all right, so today we're gonna talk about social support and the impact on survivorship. And Hannah and I thought about this topic because we often see a lot of you all, or majority of the women, say they have they have family, friends whom they identify who is supportive during this process, but yet it's challenging for them to actually get the social support that they may need, or feel that they are worthy of support during this process. One we also see and hear a lot is after the treatment is done, social support kind of goes away. It diminishes, it decreases. So we want to talk about how to be intentional, how to be meaningful, how to have meaningful relationships. What does social support look like during this breast cancer journey? How to connect with the right people, right groups, develop a healthy, supportive network to help you move through this survivorship. And we'll talk about some tools and resources that are available. So first, I want you to think about what it takes to actually promote a supportive relationship. And so some of the common myths that individuals we have about our relationships, or our friendships, or our interactions is, my loved ones are stressed and it's my fault. So that may be one of the statements or thoughts that you may have, or that you're a burden and or needy. You don't deserve the time and attention. If you ask for help, or asking is a sign of weakness and often drives people away. Relationships can be harmed if one refuses to do what is asked. So am I hurting? Will this hurt my relationship with the friend, the family, loved one, if they don't do what I ask them to do? Is there a sense of obligation? Do they feel like I'm demanding? I shouldn't have to ask because my loved one should know what I need and do it, and just do it. I shouldn't have to ask, you just do it. Am I being selfish? I should give up on my own needs and concerns. Or people won't want to be with me if I can't act or look how I usually do. So these are some common myths, relationship myths that individuals with breast cancer often have. So I want you to think about yourself. Can you think of any other myths or thoughts or ideas you may have about your friendships, families, friends, and interactions that may keep you from forming a meaningful or supportive relationship? Take some time to think about that. If any of you would like to share, that'll be great. And you can type it in the chat. So any questions, I guess, let me just say that. Any questions, concerns, feedback, just please, if you can post it in the chat, and Emily will look at it, let us know, and then we can discuss it. So if there's any others that you all can think about that you may have. Okay, let's go forward. All right, so on breast cancer journey, what does this look like? So in 2016, worldwide, there were over 15 million breast cancer survivors. Here in the United States, there are over 3.1 million. Cancer diagnosis and termination of treatment, it negatively impacts individuals' physical and psychosocial well-being, such as causing depression, anxiety, grief and loss, stress, or post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is often heard as PTSD. But social support, and we'll talk about the different types, can operate as a buffer, as well as helping you to cope, or and it directly enhances actual well-being and overall welfare and well-being. So why we've decided to do this topic is because the number one predictor of positive outcomes, that's physical, mental, psychological, relates to the level of social support that one has. So it acts as a buffer and helps, which we'll talk about. It's more of a coping mechanism. If you have positive social support, it correlates with positive coping mechanisms. So what is social support? So it's basically functions performed for an individual by significant others, such as family members, friends, and coworkers. But there are three different categories to social support. There's emotional support, informational support, and instrumental support. And when you think about emotional support, we're going to take it a step further and thinking about perceived emotional support as well as actually received emotional support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the three categories that we're going to talk about here to this morning, today, it's brunch time, are emotional support, informational support, and instrumental support. So what is emotional support? An interpersonal relationship may contribute to health because it's a source of acceptance and intimacy. So it's a relationship that is contributing to health because for you or for that person, it's a source of acceptance and intimacy. And perceived emotional support is the belief that you're going to receive, or that there's love and care, there's sympathy and understanding, esteem and value are available from friends, family, significant others. And positive or perceived emotional support associates, there's a correlation with better physical and mental health than actual received social support. Received emotional support, RES, as you see, that's why I put PES and RES, because it's easier to state. So PES correlates with better physical and mental health than RES. And one might think, how is perceived better than actually receiving? Remember, it's the belief that love and care, sympathy and understanding and esteem. So during this journey, throughout this process, if you believe or have the belief that you have positive, or that you have a supportive network, it will correlate with a better physical and mental health outcome than actually receiving the actual emotional support. And that's because receiving emotional support is not always, research show, is not always positive. However, if you perceive, there's a perception that you believe that you're going to be loved for, cared for, there's sympathy, it correlates with better physical and mental health than possibly receiving some that's not positive or that may be detrimental. And so what is received, it shows, research has shown that it does, however, when someone is actually receiving emotional support, it actually correlates and impacts women's positively women's sexual functioning, some quality of life, as well as overall health after breast cancer, specifically surgery. And so again, examples of emotional support is significant others, parents, your children, siblings, best friend, a neighbor. These are all examples of or places or ways or individuals where you can receive emotional support. Then there's informational support. And so informational support is the relationship that may provide useful information, advice, and guidance. And so what this is that your interactions or your relationship with a person is useful because you are gaining information, they're providing maybe some advice or some sort of guidance through this process, through this journey. And example would be your doctor, could be the nurses, would be a peer advocate, it could be your PT. Often Hannah and I hear a lot of individuals or a lot of you say, ask the PT, they know more than the doctors. Actually, I heard that in one of the groups, like they've seen a lot of different people, met a lot throughout this journey from beginning to end. And so they have a lot of information and can provide some guidance as to what the next step. So that's informational support. Again, medical team, because research show when there's support from the medical team, it helps to prevent psychiatric morbidity, so psychiatric problems and emotional problems for breast cancer survivors. Another example of informational support is support groups, because it helps to foster the development of a sisterhood, a camaraderie. It's an opportunity to ask questions about treatment. Also, it's an opportunity to meet individuals who can potentially provide some emotional support as well, because it can validate some commonalities as well as some common symptom experiences. Unfortunately, research show that support groups are underutilized with breast cancer survivors. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Another example of informational support would be one-on-one peer mentors, and then the buddy system, working with someone or meeting someone who's also have very similar experiences. And so pairing you up with one as a buddy system or as a mentor to provide information and guidance and support. Another word might be a coach. Again, a peer advocate. So these are all different people or individuals who can provide informational social support. And then the last is instrumental support. And so it's people who help by providing financial assistance, goods, and services. So cooking meals, running errands for you, cleaning your house. So again, Turning Point provides services. There's financial resources for those who may not be able to provide or to pay for services. You might have coworkers. This could also be your church community who they all get together and cook your meals for you or run errands, or someone from the church come and clean. It could be coworkers who do these things. They may also have coworkers who, I know some jobs allow you to share medical leave or sick time with people who may not have enough. So that's again providing a service, some goods, helping financially. Another example is North Fulton Community Charities. It's an organization in North Fulton, I think it's Alpharetta or Roswell, that provides financial assistance to pay rent, bills. They also offer a food bank. So these are examples of instrumental network or support systems that are available as well. So we've covered emotional support, informational support, and instrumental support. And so now we're going to talk about how all three of these provide benefits as well as some challenges. And then what does the research show and say about having support as it relates to improving or having a better quality of life during this journey of breast cancer. So again, what is social support? Studies have indicated that people with a lower level of social support have higher mortality rates. So again, why is it important? These are one of the reasons why, because again, research have shown that social support regarding mental health in general exists to help foster one's sense of self-worth, feelings of self-esteem, mastery, and then competency during stressful encounters. And so what is this? A stressful encounter right now. Life-changing, life-altering diagnosis. And so one needs to feel a sense of self-worth, feelings of self-esteem, a mastery of understanding this process and this journey and how to move forward. And again, the day-to-day stressors of having this diagnosis, in addition to the treatment, the course of treatment with dealing with this diagnosis. And so having social support is critical to foster positive well-being outcomes and mental health. And then finally, one thing also, social support is a way of coping. It's a coping assistance. It's a coping mechanism, because again, you learn how to ask for help when needed, rely on others to support you as you cope with and deal with the challenges in the day-to-day of this diagnosis. So it helps to, as a form of a coping assistance or mechanism strategy as well. And so when we think about social support in breast cancer for over the past 40 years, research continued to demonstrate that social support improves psychosocial outcomes and health-related quality of life for breast cancer survivors. And it helps to foster better psychosocial adjustment. So again, oftentimes we see a lot of individuals who emotionally do not even address the impact of the diagnosis and treatment until treatment is done. But if you have a support system, or you're attending groups, support groups, or maybe paired with a buddy who can share with you the journey, expectations, course of action, it can help you feel less anxious, less depressed as you're going through this treatment. And again, to improve long-term survival, because compared to those who do not, it increases the mortality rate. In addition, social support, positive social support correlates with positive clinical outcomes. And so individuals who are not, or their social supportive needs are not met, they have an increased sense of feeling like a burden. And when we talk about clinical outcomes, the leukocytes, pro-inflammatory and pre-metastatic gene expression, which is the gene that doctors look for to see if there's a chance of recurrence, all of those increase depressive symptoms, and ultimately there will be a lower quality of life. So social support not only enhance psychosocial, mental, but also clinical, physical, because again, doctors are doing tests and looking to see and constantly checking for pre-metastatic gene expression and leukocyte pro-inflammatory. And so when individuals are stressed, feel isolated, feel like they're burdened, alone, have no one to talk to, have no one to assist them through this process, have to run all the errands still, have to do all the cooking, have to still go to work, have to do all the treatment, it increases the chances of being anxious, of being depressed, and overall stressed, and not able to have a positive quality of life during this journey, or during this cancer journey. Also, during the adjuvant phase, which is when you begin to take treatment for cancer, which is pretty much during the treatment process, and when it's over to prevent recurrence, individuals reported that they see a decrease in social support. So about a year post-treatment, as in the treatment phase is ending, individuals begin, and research show that's when support actually diminishes. So individuals, family, friends, churches may not be, or coworkers or church members or friends may not be as easily accessible or reaching out to you, because again, they're feeling like you're done, it's over, now you can move on. But I want you to think about, this is the time when you would want to think about how to promote and engage in meaningful relationships and network systems during this process, because this will be the time where also it determines longevity and long-term and overall quality of life. Because again, it helps to enhance your ability to evaluate the experience, it decreases feelings of isolation, and also helps to promote a positive future. And Chang and researchers found, which we see and we hear a lot, found survivors with high psychological distress receive less support than those with physical problems. And what that means is those who are dealing with anxiety or maybe depression, they receive less support than those who may have a burn or a rash from the radiation or no hair from chemotherapy. When there's physical problems that people are able to visibly see, they provide support than those who are experiencing internal and psychological distress. So again, in order for your family, friends, others to be able to support you, they will need you to reach out and let them know that this is a tough time for you. And although physically you may appear to be okay, psychologically, emotionally, there is some distress. And the more support, again, the better you are with coping with this process. Also, having a supportive family and friends and significant others, it correlates with your spirit and your energy to fight and go through treatments and go through the process, because you have a supportive network with you as you go through this journey. And again, helps with well-being and identifying and actually utilizing effective coping strategies. So again, support systems is helping you to give you the strength and the courage and the energy to engage in healthy behaviors, interact with others, and engage in positive coping mechanisms versus negative ones. And so when we look at social support in breast cancer, I looked at a research regarding race-based differences in social support. And we've seen a lot of different panels and events regarding the experiences or the disparities, health disparities for minorities who are experiencing breast cancer. And so research has shown Paladanian and his team found that white women reported that their social network included actually other breast cancer survivors. They felt it was beneficial for them as well as for the survivor, how to support each other, which is more of emotional support. And there was a preference for support groups during this process. And it was for going support groups that were actually for people who were going through similar or same stages or similar experiences as them. So a support group that was just stage 1 survivors, or everyone in the group had a lobectomy versus a mastectomy, or a group for just individuals who had a mastectomy. So that white women identified those as the two major supportive networks for them, whereas Black women found informational support was more beneficial for them. So going to doctors, talking to peer advocates, asking them about what course of treatment works better, what to expect, gaining information, getting advice about this journey and process was more beneficial to them, as well as another source for them, Black women, was God, going to God for support. But was not identified as a support for Black women was actually talking to friends and family. And so that's what the research say, which causes them to isolate and feel alone during this process. So again, this is just some information that I want you to think about. And you may fall in like realizing, while I'm not reaching out to family, or yeah, I do participate in different support groups, that's helping me. Or it may be vice versa. So I just wanted to think about what you're using or what is working for you or is benefiting you as far as your social support. I think there's questions here. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Then 3 ways that social support acts as a buffer against stress, because we all know when we're stressed, stress takes a toll on the body, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And so how do we buffer against that? So support, regardless if it's emotional, informational, instrumental, can increase morale, causing individuals to assess events as less stressful or to perceive themselves as having adequate coping resources. Support can impact how one's ability to adhere to treatment regimens and may encourage healthy behaviors that promote treatment effectiveness. So remember, someone going to support group may have thought, maybe did not know what course of treatment that would benefit, or not sure what was out there, or was only told about one course of treatment. And then after attending the support group, learned about other courses of treatment or actions or processes that they can do. I've seen that a lot in the support groups where individuals selected one course of treatment and then someone will share theirs and they're like, I didn't even know that was available. So attending support groups prior to or before treatment, we've seen that a lot as well. Here lately, a lot of individuals coming to learn about just the overall process. Exercising, a lot of individuals talk about different ways of exercising with the limitations, not having the full range of motion. And so being able to learn and understand will help you to promote effective treatment. I've heard a lot where individuals may want to do certain exercises, but as a result learn that they can't, or they're realizing that their PT may be not improving or their range of motion because they're doing too much. And so speaking with others in support groups or talking to the PT will help to promote effective and healthy treatment behaviors during this course. And then finally, support can act through biological processes, such as, again, I talked about clinically how it impacts the body, but it can lower heart rates, it can alter hormone production, and then overall improve immune function, which is necessary during this process because of, depending on the treatment, you could be taking something that suppresses the immune system. And then I wanted to also look at what does social support look like for advanced breast cancer patients or MBC patients. And there was not much research there related to that, but I did find an article that talked about, first of all, how many of those individuals, so when I was talking about breast cancer survivors earlier, as of 2018, 5 to 10% of patients in Western countries actually received an MBC diagnosis initially. So their very first diagnosis was that they had MBC. And then approximately 20 to 30% of early breast cancer patients may recur with MBC. So that's 20 to 30% may actually their diagnosis or their cancer may become MBC. And then what was interesting was there are no numbers for the actual number of MBC patients. That is actually unknown. And that's because a lot of research, or as you can see, there's a small number that are actually diagnosed initially, and that's what the research looks at, the initial diagnosis. And so that's where the data comes from. And so when initial diagnosis is not MBC, it's hard to determine when, at what point do they become metastatic. And so what type of support did the research show for MBC patients? Majority of them looked for support or reported support from friends and family, which is the emotional support, and then from medical providers, the team, what is the best course of treatment, which was informational support. And actually less satisfied or not interested in support with support groups or social services. And I think this supports the research with Turning Point too, because we offer an MBC support group, but we haven't been able to have a good turnout for those to support through this process. So the research is pretty consistent with what we're experiencing as well. And that's because it seems that they're relying and having positive interactions and support from families and friends and from their medical professionals during this course. So what are some of the benefits and challenges? So overall support groups include Support groups are beneficial when they include individuals with similar treatment phases and experiences. So as I talked about, someone who is also metastatic, someone who maybe just still have expanders in and going through that process. But it's not beneficial when there is a variety of range of treatment phases and experiences. When there's individuals who have a lot of differences in their treatment course and experiences, it's not the most beneficial, and it can be somewhat challenging. Also, Carver found, which is a benefit, was that although denial was a notable predictor of increased negative emotions a year after being diagnosed, when one accepts the diagnosis, it's a better predictor of good emotional health. So thinking about what do you need if you are not at the phase or stage of acceptance of this diagnosis, what is necessary? What type of support do you need to move through that? Do you need to hear something from the doctors? Do you need your significant other or your children or someone to understand certain things that you're experiencing, or someone to talk to? Because it's a better predictor of good emotional support. Whereas the challenge is if you're in denial, if there's some thought of not accepting this diagnosis, it definitely increases the chances of having negative emotions. And then high levels of coping emotionally, meaning not problem solving or types of coping strategies, correlates with having poor adaptation to stressful events. And so again, during this time, during this journey, is very stressful. So not able to have balance in the ways that you're coping, and having high levels of emotional coping strategies can lead to poor coping mechanisms. So now Hannah's going to talk about the buddy system, or a buddy system.
Yes, thank you so much. And again, the chat box is open for any questions or comments or concerns or feedback or anything you'd like to add. So we're going to talk about the buddy system. And for the purpose of this presentation and at Turning Point, we'll call it the buddy system, but you might talk to a doctor or a friend who calls it like a peer-to-peer system, a peer navigation system. There are also different ways to call this one type of social support. But like I said, we'll call it the buddy system. And we've coined the term Turning Point social butterflies. And we'll get into a little bit later what that is going to look like here at Turning Point. And we'll talk about the overview, what it is, benefits, challenges, ways to connect, those kinds of things. So before we get started on the buddy system, I'd like everyone to close their eyes and picture that you're on an island, and a breast cancer diagnosis can be very isolating. You all know that, you've felt it. It can make you feel like you're alone. Let's talk about that island. Who is on it? Who's on it with you? Because you're not alone, even if it might feel that way. But think about that. Maybe write it down. Feel free to share that in the chat box now. But identify your support system and who you feel is kind of in your corner and with you on this journey. And then we'll circle back to that later as well. So the concept of social support kind of dates back to mid-70s in research, and it was identified as the importance of social ties in coping with crisis, life transitions, and deleterious environments. So with this group of people, we're talking about crisis could be, the day of diagnosis, your whole journey navigating breast cancer could be your crisis, and it could be life transitions. Maybe that's going from loving what you do every single day and going to work, and then the transition of not being able to work because you are going through treatment. And that's a huge life transition right there. So lots of things going on. As we know, social support can be huge in alleviating some of the stress and whatnot that come with those life transitions. And in 76, Cobb subsequently determined that social support has stress buffering properties, which Dr. Kennett just touched on. And we mentioned three ways, or three stress buffering properties that social support offers, and specifically a buddy system. And then later on, authors further described mechanisms for this effect through strengthening coping abilities and directly affecting immunological and psychological defenses. And we see this all the time. Dr. Kennett and I, the PTs, everybody at Turning Point sees this. And we see how important social support is. And the research that Dr. Kennett has just shown us has really backed that up. And our mission at Turning Point is to meet our patients where they are. So we have just decided to kind of form our own buddy system. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later, but we see the need for this kind of companionship that exists among our patients, and we're excited to kind of get the ball rolling and get some feedback on what you guys think. So there is a difference between a buddy system and a peer advocate system. A buddy system, I like to say, is more informal, and buddies can be chosen by participants, or they can be assigned by participants in a group, or there's lots of different ways that you can be paired up. And they've been used successfully in lots of different health promotion initiatives, and they kind of just provide that built-in connection. And we will talk about the connection and how important that is in survivorship and quality of life. And then it's not necessarily defined as a psychoeducation or advocacy relationship, but more of a comforting, supportive, encouraging friendship that kind of just alleviates some of the challenges and the stress that come along with those challenges. Whereas the peer advocate system is more of that mentor-mentee. It's got more of a psychoeducation component, and it's usually between an individual who has completed their cancer treatment and then an individual who is newly diagnosed and maybe is going through some kind of similar treatment as their buddy. And it provides peer psychological support and education. And really the goal is to decrease anxiety, which is future oriented, as we know, in newly diagnosed patients. So there's really a big difference. And so specifically, we'll be talking about the buddy system because that's what we are after. Okay, so a cancer diagnosis, we all know the individual diagnosed can experience a wide range of emotions, and many of which the friends and family and the people on your island might not understand really what you're going through, simply because they have not gone through it before. And this can cause you to feel detached and, like we said earlier, lonely, and just feel really hopeless. And I'm sure a lot of other words kind of come to mind, but when people don't understand what you're going through, it's a really tough situation. And so a buddy system, having a buddy that has been through treatment, or maybe it's not the same treatment as you, but something similar, who can relate to you, that alleviates a lot of stress. And some other benefits of a buddy system is that feeling of connection. You feel understood, you feel encouraged, you feel like you kind of have someone that just has walked through it, and you kind of feel empowered because of that. And they might be just a great source of hope and encouragement throughout that time. And a study from 2006 showed that women with breast cancer who had social support had a lower risk of dying from the breast cancer. And social scientists explore how much impact connectedness can have on our health. And connectedness and the feeling of connection to something larger than just ourselves is huge for all humans. It's a big part of life, and especially when you're going through a circumstance like a breast cancer diagnosis. Stress relief, we talked about stress earlier, Dr. Kennett did, and knowing that you're just not alone in your journey, and that can relieve stress. And it could just be that feeling of knowing that you're not alone and that someone else has gone through it, or it could literally tangibly feel like you are not alone because someone's coming with you to the doctor or to different kinds of appointments, and that just can relieve stress. Emotional healing, having someone to talk to, just to kind of vent sometimes, just to have a listening ear, can make you feel less isolated, and especially if you're talking to someone who's experienced similar emotions, like a buddy will. And then coping mechanisms, coping with breast cancer for newly diagnosed and terminally ill women is affected greatly by social support. So there's some research right there that backs that up as well. So there are lots of benefits of that one-on-one buddy system.
And I just want to add to what the sense of feeling of connection, that is critical because as humans, that is necessary. I know I can handle this, I can do this by myself. Our brains, our bodies, we're not made and geared to do and be an island and be alone. So in this process or during this journey, along with other stressful events, oftentimes when individuals feel disconnected, that's another source of stress. So having adequate, effective supportive networks and systems to help you feel connected, which is, if you noticed, every one of the different support systems allowed you to be connected to friends, to coworkers, to families, to agencies. There's some sense of connection, a sense of belonging so that you don't feel like a burden or that you're alone.
Right. Thank you. So of course, with anything, there are challenges. So the challenges to the buddy system, we'll address them here, and then we might circle back to them when we get some feedback as well. So relating to your buddy, we are humans, and if you're paired up with somebody who might be going through something different, that a different treatment or a different type of breast cancer that you have not experienced, it can be hard to relate to them. Just as we've stated, it's hard to relate to somebody like a friend or a sister has a hard time relating to you because they've never gone through breast cancer. It can kind of go the same way with a buddy system. And feeling emotionally capable to help them through their challenges along with your own. So if you are going through a time where you just feel so overwhelmed and overcome by emotions because of your own diagnosis and what's going on in your own life, you may feel like it's a little harder to make space to give relief or support to somebody who is also kind of like up to here with their emotions. That's just a hard thing to deal with. Making time for your buddy. One thing I have learned is that all of the Turning Point members that we have seen are so busy between appointments and treatments, and you're also mothers and wives and friends and sisters and husbands, and you are just busy people. And so making time for that can be really, really hard. And then conflict with a buddy, of course, I mentioned this at the very beginning, we're humans. And when you're relating to someone, eventually some kind of conflict might come up. And that is just part of being in a normal relationship. And then comparing experiences. Your buddy might be experiencing something that you haven't, and they might be experiencing something that you might not fully understand ever or just yet. And so, maybe your buddy you feel like they are going through a treatment that was maybe easier on them than it is for you. So you kind of like have that comparison factor there that can be really challenging. And then of course, the death of a buddy or the termination of the buddy relationship kind of has its own set of challenges. So like I said, when we get more into the buddy system down the road, we will address all these challenges again and make sure that we have goals and ways to kind of work through these challenges with you.
And when Hannah say down the road, not today, down the road, but as we continue to work on creating and developing the buddy system, we'll be able to share and discuss how the challenges and benefits of this actual program could help.
Yes. So connecting with supportive individuals, that is a challenge in itself. And one thing Dr. Kennett and I see a lot is that asking for help or accepting help can often feel like weakness to individuals who are dealing with breast cancer. And we have to constantly reiterate why asking for help or receiving help does not mean you're weak. We see it as a sign of strength, and you are putting you and your health first. And so we just think that acceptance here and accepting social support and maybe getting yourself involved in a buddy system, that is a sign of strength, not weakness. And making time for support, that is one way to connect with supportive individuals. And I know we have a group sessions on Wednesdays once a month. And we do that. We schedule it out in advance and kind of keep it consistent that way because, like I said, y'all are also busy. So giving yourself that Wednesday, an hour and a half, way ahead of time. And you can try to, work your schedule around it and make time for it because it's so important, as we've seen, and it is also important to make time for it. So listening, empathizing, asking how you can best support your buddy and asking your buddy for what you need is a really good way to connect with somebody. And again, a lot of people have a hard time asking for what they need. So maybe just thinking through that. What do you need from your support system? What do you need from your buddy? And turning that over and asking your buddy, how can I best support you? What do you need from me? And how can we be in this buddy system together and be helpful to one another? And I kind of just addressed the next one here. What does support look like for you? And that looks different for everybody. And it might look totally different than your buddy and the way that they ask for support as well. So stay tuned for Turning Point Social Butterflies very soon. And let's circle back to our island activity. Close your eyes if you feel like that might help you focus. And so we're back on your island. You're feeling a little isolated. You've got your people. And now knowing what you know about social support and the buddy system, what does that look like to you? Has that changed at all? My first question would be, can you identify additional supportive networks now that you couldn't have before? And remember, that's emotional support, and that is interpersonal relationships. So family, friends, buddy to buddy systems. Informational support, which is relationships that provide useful information, advice, and guidance. And instrumental support, which is support by providing financial goods and services. So is there any, and feel free to use the chat box. We'd love to see some conversation going. Can you identify anything, any new supportive networks that you hadn't thought of before? I'll give a couple seconds. And write these down as well if you'd like. Okay, and then how would you like these new networks to support you? And I feel like I just addressed this in one of the last slides. Oh, we've got someone.
Yeah, I think that Michelle sent in a message that said the buddy system mentioned here would have been nice at the beginning of the journey. So I think it was kind of more of a relational statement.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. And feel free to keep posting in there if you guys would like to. How would you like these new networks to support you? And this is a really good way to self-reflect before entering into a buddy system or going into some kind of social support area and thinking deeply reflecting on what that means to you, what you need from your social support system, what you need from your buddy, and how would you like these people to show up for you on your island, and then getting comfortable with asking them to show up in that way for you.
Let me go to the next one. Okay. And so finally, I want you to think about or questions to consider regarding how to connect and how to begin to have meaningful, supportive relationships. Because as you can see, there's a lot of research. There's no shortage of research to discuss how supportive system or social support positively impacts quality of life, clinical or physical outcomes, mental health, psychological, psychosocial stressors. The list can go on and on. And so as you've noticed, we have the activity about an island. You're not on an island. You are not alone. There are so many resources and supportive networks here. Again, it doesn't always have to be family, friends. There could be support groups. There's buddy systems. There's so many there. So when thinking about questions to consider, how are you relating to others in ways that are working well for you? Are you putting your time and energy into the people who are most important to you? And do you want to change whom you focus on and how you relate? So let's go back. Are you relating to others in ways that are working well for you? One example I see a lot is someone may say something that's not the most supportive, or provide a message that's low person centered, that doesn't really support you in this process. And you continue to engage with this person, continue to interact with this person or individual, or it could be someone at church, it could be your children, it could be a lot, it could be anyone, your good friend. If the relationship is not working well for you, if it's the way you interact is not working well for you, I want you to think about examining, is it a relationship that you want to continue to have? Is it meaningful? Because this journey is very stressful, it's life altering, challenging. And so you want to take this journey and you want support that will foster support, that will foster healthy interactions and engagement during this process, because you have enough challenges to deal with. You don't need to add or have detrimental interactions that are not meaningful or not supportive of you. And then think about, are you putting time and energy to people who are most important to you? So the ones who you do receive the support from. I always say, which if you saw one of the myths, if I keep asking, I'm gonna be a burden, I'm too needy. People will let you know when you are too needy. They're not going to say you're too needy. It depends on the relationship. But they may say, I'm not able to do that, or maybe I can do something else. That's them letting you know what they can and cannot do. I want you to give them the opportunity and ask, ask for what you need and not think about you being a burden, because people only know you need something when you actually ask and talk to them. And so if you have those individuals, you have those networks available, are you putting your time and energy into that, to make sure that you are engaging in having meaningful relationship? And then finally, do you want to change whom you focus on and how you relate to them? So as you think about the different support systems and networks that are available, is there some you'd like to make some changes to? Is there some that you're thinking I can put more time and energy to, or I realize I put too much time and energy? And so maybe going to a support group and meeting individuals who you can then have meaningful relationships, learn about the process, learn about the journey. Or talking with family and friends. Again, remember what research show, informational support, emotional support are the top majority of where people are looking for support. So if you realize that, you know what, I don't really tune into my doctor's visits, maybe having someone come with you, or asking the questions if the doctor's moving too fast or not answering all the questions, making sure they take the time to stop and answer your question so that you can write it down. But think about what's going to work for you, to have meaningful relationships and supportive systems throughout this journey, because that's what research show is a true predictor of a quality of life. And I always ask when I'm working with patients and clients who are dealing with chronic illness, disease, diagnosis, are you living to die? Or are you living to live? And so you want to identify supportive networks that will support you and foster you to live and have a good quality of life. All right, are there any questions?
Yeah, those were some awesome takeaway questions. So if y'all have any other additional questions, feel free to ask them now. The Q&A box is open as well as the chat. Thank you both so much in advance.
Mm-hmm. No questions, comments?
Michelle made a comment that showing appreciation for any support given is important to maintain support as well. We had someone else ask, how do I relate to coworkers in particular? She doesn't want to be seen as a victim or pitied when asked how she's doing, regardless of how many times she replies that she's doing well. She doesn't want to have to do that, but someone recently shared that she feels like she's walking on eggshells around her. And she said, I don't feel that I've given reasons for her to be uncomfortable, but I don't share personal medical details and think this is information this particular person wants to hear. She said, thank you for the presentation, but kind of wants to know how to relate in particular to those coworkers and those not too personal relationships.
Okay, so I hear that, I get that a lot. Like, I don't really want to share my information with coworkers. You have that right. This is your information. What often happens is maybe what is the feeling that you are experiencing as a result of not sharing. So do you feel guilty? Do you feel a sense of obligation? Because that's really what is driving the question of how do I relate to them? Because oftentimes we take on whatever they're feeling. So if you feel like they are just asking, I'm just going to say it, I didn't hear you say it, to kind of be nosy and not really to provide support, then you could share, I always err on the side of being honest, and not that anyone's lying or being a liar, but I really would not like to share that right now. If they don't like it, they don't appreciate it, that's for them to resolve, not for you. Or I'm not comfortable about talking about this right now. I think being honest will help you, because then there's no sense of obligation, because you were honest. You were honest with yourself and you were honest with them. The challenge is a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's not your responsibility to make them understand or feel a certain way as a result of your experience. So, and I don't say that just with coworkers, I say that with anyone. Either you want to share or you don't, and I don't want to share that right now, or I'm not wanting to talk about it. Oftentimes I hear I'm okay. And then, but I notice you're not working as much, or your workload is decreased, but if you're okay, then why this? And I want to ask you this, but I'm not sure. So, or each day is different. I'm taking each day one day at a time, if that's what you're doing. Or how are you feeling? I really don't know right now. I'm doing okay, or I'm here. Whatever it is, just being honest without sharing. And again, I always say, if you don't want to share, just say, I don't want to talk about it right now. That's not something I want to talk about. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question. That was great in response to that. And we had another comment that someone really liked the important mention of asking for help and not feeling like a burden. So great point made there. I think that was all very helpful. Thank you both so much.
And I want to say, regarding all of those feeling like a burden, feeling like you're needy, those are all that's your stuff, your feelings that you are taking on because you're assuming someone else is feeling that way. So unless someone says to you, you're a burden, or you're too needy for me, and you probably wouldn't get that from anyone but a significant other or a kid or a parent, and you know them, so you know what they really mean. But typically that's our own stuff that we're taking on. And so that's why I say, ask for what you need, and be clear about what you don't need, or, that's not helpful for me right now. Thank you. I'm not okay right now. I always tell clients, it's okay to not be okay. Everyone feels like we have to be okay. No, it's okay, because we're all human. So you're not a burden, you're not needy, but you are needing some things during this process. And that just looks different. It's no different if someone breaks a leg. It's no different if someone has a psychiatric breakdown and they have to be hospitalized. It's all a need that you need assistance, and assistance looks different and support looks different for each person. And I won't know what Hannah needs, and if it's different than what Emily needs, unless I either ask or they tell me. And people often don't ask because they're assuming you're not asking, so you're okay. All right.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that wraps up all the questions. Thank you both again
Thank
so
you.
much for your time, but this will all be posted on the YouTube later. And if you all have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to the staff at myturningpoint.org email or Kennett directly. And of course, they would love to answer any additional questions. But thank you guys all for attending. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram to stay in the loop for the next education event coming up. So thank you guys so much for being here today. And thank you for the presentation, Dr. Kennett and Hannah. And we hope to see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.